I'm going to be testing some rotors, so I finally got my gas machine here. So this is my fax machine from Fantom. It was back ordered for quite a while. Now I'm going to begin with the R1 rotors. I also have some Trinity rotors out of the slot machine, and then some Hobbywing rotors and Helix rotors. Pretty much I'm testing the rotors of the motors that I wish I could have tested when I tested the KVs. So if you're interested in watching the KV videos, I do have those KV videos in the channel. But first, this is the rotor off of the R1 13.5. Now, the R1s that I'm going to be referring to, these are the V21-S, if the camera focuses. I have a 13.5 and a 21.5. Right here. Now, usually 17.5 tends to be the same as 21.5, but the 13.5 is actually longer than the others. This one should be about 28 millimeters, even though they're both black. If you look at Trinity, Trinity actually changes the colors for every rotor. So this one's about 28 millimeters. I'm just going to go length. Well, if I do magnet only, then I would just remove that little bit. So this would be an approximation. So about 25/8, say 26. Thickness should be the same. This should be close to 12.5. This one's 12.4. But this is the 13. Now I had it close to the machine. But let's go ahead and do this. All right, here it goes. Go ahead and place it here. And all right, so there's a bit of a difference between A and B. So keep spinning this. All right, so it's about 15. So just a quick little note, it's these numbers here that we want to look at. Let me turn off the light. See if it looks better. Somewhat, not really. Well, here, let's see. So if I move this, this is going to affect where it reads. All right, so I'm going to read them all back here. So it's these numbers right here. And we have a 1706, 1894. And as long as those stay steady, we are pretty good. All right, well, let me go ahead and swap this one out. I'll go ahead and reset. I have to get the other magnet out of the way, which is what I did. And here we go. So this is out of the 21.5. So like I said, 21.5s and 17.5s tend to have the same rotor in motors. So we're looking at 1695, 1649. Well, it's a little higher. So this will take the highest reading. So they are under 1,700 Gauss, which is interesting because I'm trying to still figure out why the lower KV. If you have seen my videos on the KVs, the R1 had lower KVs, so I'm kind of curious about that. But we will see. So these are the R1. Again, this is the 21.5, and I will have a data table at the end, and this is the 13.5. Now I'm going to move on to the next rotors. Now, before I do though, I should check. Oh, there it goes. Okay, so this is the 21.5 rotor. It should be shorter than the other. It is over millimeter 50 shorter. If I go here, the other one was just over 25. This one, again, is approximate. So about a millimeter different. And this one's closer to 12.5, the other one was 12.4. But because the other one is longer, it will offer more torque. So that's something to keep in mind as well. All right, the next one up is the slot machine. Now, the rotors from Trinity between the slot machine and Xfactor, it's the same rotors. So if you look at the part numbers, it's the same. Camera's not focusing, but this is, here, let's see. Well, it's TEP 1119. This is the rotor that comes in, shall we reset that? That comes in the 21.5, 17.5, and 13.5. So 13.5, this would be a 13.5. That's the rotor that comes in this. So here we go. All right. Wow, that's surprisingly low. Wasn't expecting that. 1650. I was actually expecting this to be closer to 1700. Oh, there we go. Now we have a 1744. All right. All right. Well, we have 1701 and 1735 for the Trinity. So this is. It's still higher, a bit higher than the R1, but not much of a difference. This is compared to the 21.5, of course. Now here, dimensions. Let's see. I'm gonna go overall. This one's slightly shorter. Not by much, but slightly shorter. Let's see if I go to here, the one was just over 25. Oh, actually the magnet portion is about the same. So it's pretty close. So lengthwise, they're about the same. Width, they're about the same. So won't worry about it dimension-wise. To be honest, looking at it, I wonder if they're interchangeable. I'm not going to try right now, but I'm curious. All right, so I'm only doing the one rotor, mainly because the other one went to bed and I discarded that one. But this is the rotor again that appears on the 21.5, 17.5, as well as the 13.5. So at this point, I'm going to start looking at the other rotors from the other motors. Now the Hobbywing, the rotors, I'm looking at the G4s, G4, so 17.5, 21.5, and 13.5. I have the rotors right here. Now they're all different part numbers. I believe the dimensions are the same. It's probably just the Gauss rating that is different. So this is the rotor off of the, 21.5. So I'm going to go overall. Alright, so it's about the same as the other one. All right. So this is about the same size. So this is on the 21.5 and the 21.5. So this seems to be about the same size as the 13.5 on the R1, which is a little larger than the 21.5 on the R1. As you can see, just holding it here, it already triggered this. So let's go ahead and set this. reset that since I moved it. So I'm actually quite surprised. I could have sworn the 21.5 was stronger than it is just based on how it drives. But it's actually a little lower Gauss. So this one's under 1700, which is below the Trinity and the R1, between them. So at this point, what I'm seeing as the main benefit of the R4 is just that it runs a lot cooler than the Trinity counterparts. That's pretty much it. So let's go ahead and take the 21.5 off, and we'll do the 17.5. So this is off of a 17.5. So I took that motor apart. Brand new inbox. Let's see. All right, 17.5. This is actually, these are really good numbers. Well, I mean, they're good numbers, not extraordinary. I mean, that's what it should be, at least 17. So this is pretty good. If you have had the G4, sorry, the G3s, so the other ones, they tend to have weaker rotors, and these are actually very similar in strength to the competition. So now this is the rotor from a 13.5. Now, the reason why I'm measuring them all is because they all have different part numbers. That's the reason why. Now, keep in mind, not all magnets are exactly the same. So if you look at some of the companies when they advertise their rotor strength, you will notice that, for example, Trinity will say plus or minus. So they will say 1700 plus or minus, which is normal. Oh, right, here, let's see. So this is the one off the 13.5. Probably all going to be the same. Yeah, roughly the same. If I were to go here, it should 25.7, somewhere around there, yep. All right, so they are, they're all about the same. This is the 17.5. I did not measure the 17.5. Oh, this one's a little thinner. Interesting. Here, let's go ahead. All right, go back. That's a little shorter as well. So 17.5 has a slightly shorter, about half a millimeter shorter. That's if I measured in the right spot, compared to the others. So the only rotors I have left to put on the analyzer are the Helix. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab those. All right, so now I have the Phantoms. Now these are the last two. I have a rotor off of a 21.5 and then a 17.5. Screw stuck on there. All right, now the numbers are different between the two, even though they're the same color, which is one thing that I like about Trinity is they tend to use different colors. Oops, okay, let's not be too rough. Let's see, overall, they're all about the same. I mean, they should. And there's approximate, they're all about the same. Thickness, 1245, all right. And then just to get all the measurements out of the way, so that was the 21.5, this is the 17.5. So let's go ahead and, all right, so 17.5, all right, 17.5, yeah, huh, I wonder why they have a different part number. Maybe it's the, oh, this one's a little thinner. Oh, well, if I do that, and it's still a little thinner. I'm not sure why they have a different, unless that's the series, unless this determines the magnet and the number here is just the series. That could be it. So this rotor, just to show you, this is 17.5, see Rotor RSM, and this one says the same thing. They're the same color, dimensions, they're about the same. So we'll see. This is the 21.5. So I'm looking at about 1728, 1723. According to the sheet, it said 1750. And these rotors are brand new. I have not run these. So that's interesting. So 1728 for this one, which is still pretty good compared to the others. It's definitely up there. It looks like the Fantom and the Trinity might have the stronger rotors, but I'll take a look at the table a little after. So this one's a little lower. This is 1708 and then 1686. So they're all very, very close. I don't really think there's much of a difference. It's probably going to come down to preference. But based on how I've run the motors, it does seem that the Hobbywing runs cooler than the Trinity models. I have to see about this Helix. So this Helix is going to go into the touring car, run it for a while, and then see how it does. So as a bonus, I'm going to do the Fantom rotor that was in my buggy before I replaced it with the Helix. Now this one, notice, I don't know if the color matters, but this one's black. The other one was red. But even this one's still pretty good. And I ran this one for quite a bit, about a year. So there we go. Now I'm going to switch over to the data table. So again, this is the Fantom Icon. These are not in alphabetical order. I just started with the R1 because that's the one I tested first. But for the R1, I only tested the V21-S, 13.5, 21.5. These are the rotor numbers that were on there. The last two numbers are probably what determines what rotor you get. But the 13.5 on this one, there's a large spread. There's quite a spread between A and B. So these two poles. I think that's too much of a spread as far as I'm concerned. And I did try it again, and I cannot figure it out. So it's just the magnets in there. But the 21.5 did have a rotor that was pretty close. Now remember, this is a shorter rotor than this top rotor. This one's slightly longer. So that's a quick note. Will it fit? Yes, you can interchange the rotors if you wanted to. It just depends on the application. But this rotor was pretty nice, and it's very close to 1700 Gauss, 1700 Gauss. And the reason why I'm using that number 1700 Gauss is because of Trinity. So Trinity advertises its rotors, well, the TP1119, as 1700 plus or minus as far as the Gauss. Now this rotor, this one comes in the 21.5, 17.5, and 13.5. So I took this one out of my 13.5 slot machine. I am down rotors, 3 so far. They just keep breaking after a while. I don't know why. But the Gauss, it's very good. That's what they advertise. 1700 plus or minus, which is 1701, 1735. Close enough, but they're good. They're just over 1700. Now, Hobbywing. I only have the G4s. Now, on all of these motors here, if you look at my channel, feel free to watch the other videos where I actually run the KVs and the timing and everything. I am going to show some data only on the 21.5s, mainly because that's the motor I use the most right now. And those are the ones I've been playing with a little more. But do watch them if you want information on the 13.5s in here, or the 17.5s. But going into the Hobbywing, so 13.5, it's all right, right? This is all right. Now, Hobbywing with the G3, generally the rotors tended to be a little weaker than some of the others. Maybe they were a little more RPM based versus torque based, and that's probably because of the difference, 5 versus 7. So some of the G3s I think have a 5 versus a 7. So this number here in front, this has to do with the magnetic field, which is related to the surface area of the rotor. So that might be why. I'm not really sure. I don't have a G3 at this time, but right now this is what I do have. So these are the numbers for the rotors. So the ending is the difference, really. But if we look at these, this is my 21.5, and after running this is probably why I like this motor so much. It is that 1700 plus or minus, and if you look at the Trinity, I mean, they're very, very close. Now, numbers-wise, once I go into the KVs, you're going to see, but really there isn't much difference between the G4 and the slot machine. I would say it's your call. I do think the G4 is a little better made, a little better machined. When you look at the motors, it just looks nicer the way it was designed, especially the end bell. The end bell is a lot nicer, a lot smoother to change the timing compared to the slot machine. But then again, if you're just going to set the timing once, say at 45 degrees, and never touch it again, well, then it doesn't matter. Laminations are larger here, not wider, but diameter-wise, they're larger. They go all the way to the edge of the can diameter, versus these are smaller. So maybe that's what helps with cooling. This one runs just a little cooler than the slot machine based on my runs. Both of these run a lot cooler than the Xfactor. The Xfactor doesn't compare to these at all. That one's old news. Slot machine is definitely far better. So if you have an Xfactor and you're considering going to a slot machine, I wouldn't even think twice about it. If you're debating whether you want to go with a slot machine or a Hobbywing, you're going to be happy with either compared to the Xfactor. So I'm comparing these to the Xfactor. Now, these are the same rotors, slot machine and the Xfactor, which is interesting. So the can just has to be a lot better. I'm not really sure what all the differences are, but they do run cooler and better. Let's see, back to the G4. So 21.5, this is the one I was talking about. So long ago, well, with the G3s, there used to be, from my understanding, a bigger difference in Gauss, where Trinity would generally outperform the Hobbywing by a lot, at least 50 Gauss. Now they're very, very close. They're almost identical. So it's really going to be up to you. Now, the Fantom, these are the two Fantoms that I have, 17.5, right, brand new, haven't used. This one is installed in my USGT, which will be replacing this motor, just so I can test it, see how it runs, see what I think. And I don't know if I got lucky, maybe, but this is 1728, 1723. Gauss is very, very close, but the spread is closer than here. So that's the reason why. But I would say between these three, just based on Gauss, between these three, these would definitely be my top 3 picks. But it's really going to be up to you. The machine work, everything is very nice on this Helix. This one's probably the best as far as the machine. The reason why I like it is these are all 3-piece. This is only a 2-piece, so it's just the rear part that comes out. So that's one less piece that I have to align when I'm screwing the pieces together, versus these, you have the front part of the bell, you have the laminations, and then you have the end bell, that whole section. This is just 2 pieces, so it makes it easy. Now these screws run horizontal with the rotor. These run perpendicular, so these are radial screws in the end. So I like that as well. But it's really up to you. but they are very, very nice. Now for the Fantom, these are the rotors here, so it's the last two numbers that change. I'm not really sure what the difference is. They are FAN 19, both of them, so this is probably the rotor size, and this might be the series maybe. I honestly do not know. If you know, please put it in the comments. They measured about the same. They're both the same color, but I mean, that could mean nothing because these were the same color and the 13.5 was definitely longer than the 21.5. But this is the Gauss, so maybe I got lucky with this one. I have no idea. Notice the spread here versus the spread here. This is only a difference of 5. That's the reason why. But again, magnets are not all the same. So you could potentially buy the same exact motor and get results that are closer to this or something totally different. Now, just for fun, I decided to test my old Icon V2. And my old Icon V2, I mean, this thing can hang. Now, KV-wise, this one outperforms it. So, rotor-wise, is it worth replacing? Maybe, maybe not. I think timing and gearing would make a bigger difference, but definitely more KVs with this one. So I'm not sure what they did to the can or the windings, but there's definitely something different. And the reason why, so if I go into the 21.5s, so here they are, and I've covered this in some other videos. I will pick this 4.1 amp. So this is about 46 degrees versus 4.0 here on the Hobbywing, which is 46 degrees. So the same degrees the Hobbywing does about 2591, so 2591 versus 2510. They're very, very close. These two motors are nearly identical, I would say, in my opinion, at this range, at this particular range. Now, those are the only numbers that are very, very close. If I go to 6, this is 51 degrees, 2705 for the slot machine. Hobbywing's at 50 degrees, so 1 degree difference. Amps a little less, and we're at 2785. So the Hobbywing does have slightly more KVs, but these two motors are almost identical. It's just in my experience with my two motors, and this could just be random because, you know, luck of the draw with the motors out of the batch that were produced. The Hobbywing does seem to run slightly cooler, but not much. It's not something I would make a decision. As far as I'm concerned, they are almost the same. I would base it more on your preference. If you've had Trinity and you've had great experience with Trinity, probably just stick with them. If you've owned Hobbywing and you're a Hobbywing fan, then just stick with Hobbywing. It's a really great motor. I do love this motor. Ran this in my touring car, ran this in my USGT, both great motors. But this one I consider to be a little smoother, nicer to drive. But then again, it could be the difference in the cars. Same chassis, X-Ray X4s, but keep in mind, different body, different tires. So that could make a difference. Slightly different weight, but not much. They're almost the same weight. Now, Fantom Helix, this one's the one that's installed right now in my USGT, which is the one that I'm going to try out. This is where I would say it gets impressive. So this is where I set my motor. And notice it's 2952 versus 27 under 2800. So this one is pulling more KVs at just under 50 degrees timing. I'm just going to say 50 degrees of timing. 5.5 amps. So if I compare it to this, actually I'll compare it to the 6. It doesn't matter. It's still more. If I compare this to the 5.8, right, 2785. So the Fantom, based on this, has a rotor that is of similar strength, but more KVs for the timing and the amp draw. So based on paper, Fantom Helix RS might be the one to consider. Maybe. This one, I'm not so sure about the R1. The R1, maybe setting it at certain degrees and then just gearing it low, setting it at 45. That's That's what's told. Oh, well, if you look at the comments on one of my videos by Nedum A, that's what he wrote, that some of the drivers for R1, what they do is they set this at 45 degrees, leave it there, and then they just gear up. So they just play with the gearing, which is interesting, because that's generally pretty low on the amp draw. I mean, this one's only drawing, so this is 52 degrees, it's only drawing 3.3 amps. So at 45 it would draw less. Now once you apply a load to a motor, the amp draw will increase. So I'm wondering if the reason why they set it at 45 is to get more torque, and then they just deal with the gearing. So that's a possibility, but then again, you could do that with any of these. So let's say you were to set this at 44, you're looking at 2697 kV compared to these, so it's still higher kV. And then if I go back and we look at the Gauss, Helix, Trinity, Hobbywing, and this one right over here, the Gausses are all very, very similar. So the Fantom Helix RS is definitely outperforming every other motor as far as kV for similar Gauss on the rotor, similar dimensions, and similar amp draw. So timing, amp draw, just in general. But again, have not run it yet, so I'm not sure heat-wise if all of a sudden the heat's going to rise or not. So far, comparing these, actually this one was very nice. So if this one's anything like this when it comes to heat, it's going to be a very sweet motor. This is my old one, and I really do liked it. I really did like it, but I'm trying this one out, see how it works out. Well, this being said, I hope this was useful information, or at least entertaining. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe if you have not, and I'll catch you in the next one.
Oh, my hair! My arm! My rod!